Titans fans, we just got the official trailer for Season 4 of Titans, and I'm not even joking, there is so much to go over, so many tidbit clues and teasers for the Church of Blood, Lex's involvement in a way that I didn't actually see coming, certain other things like sightings of none other than Deathstroke, and tons of other things because I've connected certain things and scenes in this trailer to other scenes that have led to quite a few plot theories, so I can't wait to discuss that with you. And with everything that this official trailer gives us, I've heard through the grapevine, as they say, that despite all of these reveals, there is so much that this season is still holding back from us, the fans. So they are packing a lot more than what even this shows us in this official trailer. So get ready. So if you couldn't tell from the video length, I know it's a long video, but we are going super in depth today. And I can assure you that every single detail as a Titans fan is worth sticking around for as we're carving into every scene this offers up. Now, for those of you who are brand new to Titans or brand new to Titans Season 4, the official synopsis for this season is as follows. Having saved Gotham, the Titans hit the road to head back to San Francisco. But after a stop in Metropolis, they find themselves in the crosshairs of a supernatural cult with powers unlike anything they faced before. Season 4, Part 1 of Titans premieres November 3rd on HBO Max, and we're getting 6 episodes, and then the last 6 episodes are releasing sometime in 2023. But enough wasting time, let's get into this breakdown. All that's left to say is like the video, it really shows your support for the channel, share it. So, the trailer opens up with a man and woman standing in a room. Everything is pretty red there, and the figure approaches them from behind. But then we cut to this girl playing on a handheld video game console, and it seems as though there's some kind of power cut, which is when we visit Dick and Raven, and Dick says whatever happened here, they want to hide it, and Raven's just like, they can't hide it from me. And this is where she uses her demon powers to enter this kind of dreamscape or demonscape, I guess you could say, to somewhat see an echo of what could have gone down in this location. And when Raven is in that somewhat echo of what happened, she approaches this girl, and there's like a deep freezer in her background and seemingly these meat hooks, but more on those meat hooks in a little bit. And this is where she touches the girl on the shoulders, and we see that masked figure appear behind her. Now this masked figure grabs her, and Raven screams, "Who are you?" And then Raven gets cut out, the dreamscape, demonscape, whatever you want to call it, with Dick calling her name, asking what she saw. Now I'm sure you're wondering, who the heck is this hooded masked figure with a freaking beak on the mask or whatever? Well, we can confirm if you look a little bit closer in the trailer that they are a follower from the Church of Blood. Now I'm sure many of you are like, well, that's obvious, isn't it? Creepy, Church of Blood related, but we do actually see them in a scene that we're going to go over in a few minutes, that there's at least 2 of these masked figures standing alongside Mother Mayhem as she thrusts her staff into the floor in the Temple of Azarath here. So this is very likely around the very early part of the season where Raven is truly picking up on the trail of the Church of Blood, and that's how it kind of educates the Titans as to what kind of group they're dealing with. Now the thing is, you may have noticed that the location that Dick and Raven are in, it doesn't seem to match the place of where Raven approached a girl in that demonscape, but I can tell you where this is, and that's because it is none other than Lex's office in the LexCorp Tower, as we can see the exact same shot of Lex sitting down in this room a little bit later on in the trailer. So very interesting to combine the worlds of Dick saying whatever happened here, they want to hide it, but yet that's all in connection with whatever this little demonscape, dreamscape vision is. And the interesting aspect being that Dick and Raven are in Lex's office and Lex's whole larger connection to all of this occult stuff. But I said we'll go back to those meat hooks that we saw in Raven's vision. After the previous scene ends, we then see the Titans team all suited up, apart from my boy Tim, but don't worry, you will get your Robin suit towards the back end of the season. It seems as though they do enter this place from Raven's demon vision, and and we see those hooks again, except this time, yeah, that people are attached to it. And not only that, you can tell that they have these little tubes draining their blood into these canisters here. And if you ask me, that's most likely from the Church of Blood gathering blood, literally blood, for some kind of ritualistic reasons to gain power or whatever. And I said in my previous teaser trailer breakdown where we saw the hand burst through the blood bath pit, if you will, of what we now know from this trailer is the Temple of Azeroth. I said that they're probably gonna have to get that blood from somewhere, and I think this shot answers that question. Now up next we cut to the Church of Blood's base of operations, if you will, with the crowd all gathered as the camera follows Franco Potente's mother Mayhem. She somewhat rallies them. She walks up and then thrusts her staff down into the center of what could be one of these old glyphs that we got more prominently featured in the teaser trailer, as you're seeing on screen right now. These same glyphs appear to be all over Brother Blood's suit or armor, if you will, and they actually have meaning, and one of them actually says always and forever, which is a bit of a shout out from Joseph Morgan to the Originals fans out there. And I do want to point out right in the center before her is that blood pit, and where we see the hand rise out in that first official teaser, of which you can only assume is eventually going to be Sebastian Sanger / Brother Blood's hand as he rises. But we never got this behind shot before of this base of operations, as I keep calling it, and you can see how this bone-like structure seems to form with two eyes behind it. Now more on this in a little bit. Also, when we see the base of operations for the Church of Blood, in this one shot, we can actually see Joseph Morgan's Sebastian, who is standing there present and in attendance for whatever this meeting will lead to. This is most likely after some of the latest scenes in the trailer that we see when he's somewhat brought in by Mother Mayhem, a bit kind of bewildered by all of this, but will soon get somewhat seduced and indoctrinated into this cult. And I have to say, I do love the editing of this trailer with the constant chanting from the Church of Blood saying Azarath, Metreon, and Zinthos. As I went over in my previous breakdown, this is usually the words that Raven uses to kind of tap into her darker demon magic, but here it seems as though the Church of Blood are using it to tap into something greater. Okay, so this part of the breakdown is where things get very interesting and where it actually caught me off guard. Mother Mayhem talking to Lex Luthor. Now, we all knew that Lex Luthor would be in this season and that it would further the storyline of Connor Kent and everything that goes along with him having quite the conflict there, but I don't think any of us expected him to have like a proper link to the foundations of the Church of Blood. And when I say foundations, I mean like this season and what's going on in present day, because for all I know, they could actually go back centuries. Now, we see Mother Mayhem saying to Lex that the Temple of Azarath is now yours. Welcome to the ancient world, Mr. Luthor. Soon, the gods will know your name. And I love the line written for Titus Welliver's Lex here, and where he responds, I can assure you, the gods already know me. And that could be a cool little reference to Superman, who's sometimes viewed as a god, if you will. And not only that, Lex in the comics does ascend to certain relationships with god or new god-like figures. But hold up, let's stop for a second, because there is so much to dissect from this scene when you take a second look. So first of all, we can now see that the Church of Blood's base of operations, as I keep calling it throughout this video, is actually called the Temple of Azeroth. It's just that earlier, or in the teaser trailer when we see it, it's very creepily, cultily lit with dark fire embers lighting up the chamber, if you will. But here we see it in a whole different light. I mean, quite literally. So I'm not sure that if in this adaptation, the Temple of Azeroth is exclusively on Earth, or if there is another dimension, if you will, as there is in the comics, where the main Temple of Azeroth is, and perhaps this could be a sister temple that's located on Earth, yet still called the Temple of Azeroth, if you will, especially just when you pair it with what Mother Mayhem said, welcome to the ancient world, Mr. Luthor. It could just be that in this Titans iteration, because as I always say, adaptations don't literally copy and paste, sometimes they change things up, could just be that the Temple of Azeroth has always been on Earth in this adaptation, and it's just a place from the ancient world. But regardless, I do wonder with these scenes that you're seeing on screen if we're going back in time a little bit, or if there's a little bit of flashbacks here. And you may be wondering why, And they might not be flashbacks. It could just be that at the beginning of the season, the Temple of Azarath isn't as creepy as we see it of when the Church of Blood are crowded in there and everything is just, well, yeah, very creepy looking compared to what you're seeing here. And then as the first several episodes unfold, because by the way, I'm pretty sure that this trailer shows at least 5 episodes worth of footage, that along the way, it gets more and more creepy as you're seeing on screen right now, but it could also actually be a flashback, and that's for a few reasons, because here we can see that the Temple of Azarath, that the Church of Blood obviously use at some point as their more creepily lit base of operations, is currently lit up with actual lighting, giving off a blue and green hue to the room. There's tech in the background, these laptops, of which I wish I could see the details of, but unfortunately, no matter how much I zoom in, it's just a bit too pixelated, but trust me, I have tried. So obviously, this is the same Temple of Azarath that we saw earlier in the teaser trailer, or earlier on in this official trailer, just at a different part in time, perhaps, when Lex Luthor first comes across it. And that just makes me think, of course, Lex Luthor could literally be the instigator and behind this awakening, if you will, of the Temple of Azarath and thus the Church of Blood coming into its own in the first place. It's a very diabolical Lex Luthor plan to do, especially with the line of what Mother Mayhem says, saying, "Soon the gods will know your name." Perhaps he's deliberately trying to reach Trigon because, hey, it's Lex, and here's another way of how I can just try and wield a power against Superman or something, or just even try and attain a higher power so he can take on his enemies for himself. And whether these are flashbacks of when Lex first found this with Mother Mayhem before she becomes fully fledged Mother Mayhem, and before this place goes from pretty bright blue lighting to dark, creepy, cavernous lighting, it does seem as though regardless of if it's a flashback or just at episode 1, it doesn't quite look what it looks like in episode 5 where it's more creepily lit, that Mother Mayhem initially works for Lex Luthor, tasked to find this location as a part of his larger diabolical plans, and eventually goes on to herald the coming of the Church of Blood in present day. Also, if these are flashbacks, I do want to consider that Mother Mayhem seems to look a little bit healthier here. Maybe I'm looking into that a bit too much, because I swear that in the fight against the Titans with her staff, where she whoops all of their asses, she looks a little bit more paler, a bit more corrupt. It kind of reminds me of Star Wars Darkseid corruption that in like some of the old Knights of the Republic games, and I think this is pretty much canon anyway. The more you use the dark side, the more subtle decay actually occurs on your visual look. Whereas here, Mother Mayhem, she looks pretty smart, and she's hanging around with Lex, and she just looks very formal. Now, we did hear that Lex's involvement in Titans Season 4 would be somewhat short, but a memorable appearance. Now, I still think that could very well be the case, believe it or not, and this trailer could just kind of seem like he's in it a lot more than what he is. And what these trailer clips are really showing is just the context as to how the Temple of Azarath was first found, thus launching the main threats of Season 4 being the Church of Blood and just how they came to be. It's also just pretty cool seeing Lex stand right in the dead center of those 2 eyes that we spoke about earlier. Also in front of the pit of blood, or maybe it's empty right now, but eventually it will have blood in there. Because it also gives off a little bit of a Legion of Doom visual with those 2 eyes there, because sometimes that is a bit of a depiction of the Legion of Doom in the comics. But after all of this, we cut to a familiar scene that we saw in the Superboy and Lex Luthor clip that was released a week ago-ish, and that is when Lex contacts Superboy via that frequency, saying that he wants to meet at LexCorp Tower at 8 p.m. that same day, just as the Titans were leaving Metropolis. Now, this is when the trailer cuts to this person seemingly releasing this snake, and we can also see that Raven is lying on the floor in this location with handcuffs on that seem extra beefy, so I guess they dampen her powers. We then hear a voice saying that Luthor got caught up in the occult. I can't really tell whose voice this is. It's not Sebastian because it has quite an American accent to it. When that line is said, we also see Lex flicking through this journal here. Now, whether this is his own recordings and research into the powers of Azarath, or perhaps a journal he's found from someone else, we don't really know. We do know that Bruce kept some certain journals, but I can't really imagine Lex Luthor just rocking up to Bruce's journals and taking one of them. But considering he had notes on the Lazarus Pit and stuff, maybe we have a lot of Batman findings on the occult and the supernatural and places like the Temple of Azarath. And yes, trust me, I've tried looking at these pages, but it is very hard to make out what it is other than some symbols here. But I would love to know if any of you have some insight on what can actually be seen or read from this journal. But it is safe to assume that whatever's in this journal is what is tempting Lex to uncover the Temple of Azarath with Mother Mayhem, as we saw in that version of the room that was more Lex lit up with his tech there and everything, and ultimately his search for whatever power he is trying to wield to, you know, always elevate himself up into a bit more of a formidable position. This is where Dick says to Connor Kent, among the footage of him fighting ninjas, warning him that Luthor was the only man that Bruce Wayne was ever afraid of. And Connor says that Superman's not afraid of him, so neither am I. Now Dick slams down harder by saying, you should be. This scene here likely takes place after Connor gets that message from Lex Luthor to meet at LexCorp Tower that very evening, and says to the team that we need to go back to Metropolis. And then after that, or shortly after that, he'd inform the team of, not only do we need to go back to Metropolis like we saw in that clip, but the reason is that it's Lex. And then this scene would unfold with Dick, because obviously he would know all about Lex Luthor. He knows all about the Justice League dealings from Bruce. Sometimes they hung out in the cave when he was a kid. So all while Dick will try and put an effort into saying, like, trust me, I know this guy. I know he's half of your dad and everything. This guy is really dangerous and you shouldn't trust him. But at the same time, Dick can't exactly force Connor to not want to help get answers and find out a little bit more of the reasons to why he was created, and just ultimately get to know his parent, whether he is bad or not. I mean, he's bad, but you know what I mean. And the thing is, despite Connor registering this, he's still likely going to be susceptible to the influence of his father, especially with how we've got some insight from New York Comic Con that Clark Kent, Superman himself, sends a message to Connor through the form of a letter saying, sorry, I couldn't be there. So the father who does turn up is Lex. You can kind of see where this is going, and it's going to be quite an arc for Joshua Orpin's Superboy character this season. Now, this is when we're shown Jinx in the trailer, and she seems to be using her magic to enter some location, possibly breaking in as she's moving like these lasers out of the way with her magic as well. And that's when we hear Dick Grayson say that we're dealing with the supernatural, and that scares me. This goes along with the comments that Brenton Thwaites said about Dick Grayson. I recommend checking out my previous video, by the way, because I break down every little plot teaser, character teaser that the cast said at New York Comic Con. He goes on to say that her name is Jinx. The trailer then goes into this club location that appears to be in a church, and I actually remember covering this in a breakdown video in the Titans Season 4 coverage months and months and months back, and some of you actually may remember seeing some behind the scenes clip of this very location, but it just seems to be some kind of location of potentially an abandoned church where people just hang out, and maybe Jinx is one of those people as we see that Dick approaches her. But of course, Dick seems to be getting into a bit of a fight here with those hanging out at the church bar, and it seems that Jinx and Dick could have some history. We hear the line from Jinx saying, Dick Grayson, dealmaker extraordinaire, hard pass. So like initially she doesn't really want much to do with them, but as Greg Walker, the showrunner, said, and as I mentioned in my previous breakdown video, check it out, she does bounce allegiances. She is a friend of the Titans, but she is kind of chaotic neutral, so she will be helpful, but I'm guessing she will stab them in the back sometime along the way. Corey's just like, okay, I don't know whatever all this is, but we do need your help. And as Brenton Thwaites also detailed, that after learning about the Church of Blood, they go to Jinx, who is all wrapped up in that occult and magic world, and she can help them find out who this group is. And so finally, this is when we get some Joseph Morgan, Sebastian Sanger footage in this trailer, and this is obviously long before he gets his Brother Blood mode switched on. And we start off with a cityscape view of Metropolis. You can see the Daily Planet there, even LexCorp Tower right next to it. And Sebastian Sanger says that the world is a brutal place. We're all so alone. And then we see Sebastian walk into this room here, and a man is holding some sharp-ass scissors, and yeah, things get pretty messed up because he plunges them into his eye, but not before Sebastian gets pretty close in an effort to try and stop him. Now, this does kind of make me think about a theory here, so I'd love to know what you think of this. So I initially thought that Sebastian Sanger could actually work at Star Labs, and that's how he knows Dick and Raven, as Joseph Morgan teased that Sebastian knows them on a first name basis. But it could actually be that this job that Sebastian works, this dead ends job, as Joseph Morgan puts it, could be at LexCorp Tower. And I'm pretty unsure about this. I do want to let that be known, but I do have a theory as to what lands Sebastian Sanger in this scene, potentially under arrest as Mother Mayhem seemingly comes to his rescue, and that could be how she brings him into the Church of Blood. Or even if he's not under arrest in this scene, perhaps he's just being held in LexCorp Tower. And the reason why I think he could work at LexCorp Tower is more because of what we've already determined in this breakdown. It's quite likely that Mother Mayhem works for Lex, as we went over earlier. She helped him find the frickin' Temple of Azarath. And here, she quite literally says, I know you, Sebastian, and I know what's in your heart. So if she knows Sebastian, I know you, Sebastian, and she works for Lex, then it's not too much of a far reach to say that maybe the way she knows Sebastian is in some form of colleague way because they've worked together under the employment of Lex Luthor, even if, albeit, they're in completely different fields. So yeah, I think what's going on in this scene is that maybe someone or whatever's going on is trying to make it look like Sebastian did this to this guy. But of course, as we know he didn't, Mother Mayhem comes along and is like, I know you, Sebastian, I know what's in your heart, and somehow gets him out of it. And obviously with his life being quite downtrodden up until this point, and again, this is just a theory, if he's framed for this, and maybe that's intentional because who did this to this guy? You have to think he wouldn't necessarily do that to himself. Maybe it was all planned to make Sebastian be put in this position. He then just goes along with Mother Mayhem because at this point he's sick and tired and wants to see what she can offer him. Up next, we can see Sebastian Sanger grabbing his face and his hair, screaming in frustration. Now, as to what's causing this specific moment, obviously, I have no idea. And I believe we could get a little peek at Sebastian's office of work. Again, it's somewhat hard to tell. This could just be a room that he likes doing things in his house. It also appears he's quite interested in animals here, as you can tell from the background. I also wonder if he somewhat takes them apart. As you can tell from the bottom left, there seems to be something dead there. And then along with these fast-paced teasers at this point in the trailer, do bear with me, we get a very quick look at Sebastian completely covered in blood. Now, I wonder what the heck is happening here. He seems to be kind of raising his right hand up and like letting it out a little bit. This could just be because he's trying to release something, maybe some form of occult magic, but I could be completely wrong there, and he might just be simply reaching out to try and grab something or someone. Either way, I think we can draw the conclusion that compared to Sebastian very early on in the beginning of these clips in this official trailer to the end of where he's covered in blood, it's going to be a hell of a ride for his journey to the actual risen version of himself, Brother Blood. Up next, we get a little bit of a tease of Mother Mayhem in that scene of where she completely whoops the Titans' asses. The staff is lit up with that red lightning, if you will, but we get a voice saying, "Who the hell are you?" Now, a lot of fans are debating as to whether this is actually Jason Todd or Connor Kent. Now, we know Jason Todd isn't in that scene because we've got the whole more or less scene released in that clip of the Titans getting their asses handed to them. But at the same time, it still isn't totally unusual for trailers to sneak in a line that is pre-recorded over a completely different scene from a different character. So there is some merit to that being Jason's voice, but I'm not saying it is. It could be Joshua Orpin's voice, just kind of saying loudly from the distance, "Who the hell are you?" before, as we know, he runs in and then gets his ass handed to him. I don't really know. We know that Jason will appear in this season very briefly. Again, that doesn't mean he's in this scene. In fact, we kind of know that he isn't, but it could just be from a totally different scene, but I would love to know your thoughts there. Then up next, we get a mix of the Titans fight scenes, as we've already broken down before, except here, we see that Gar and Connor are fighting this crowd. But the next big-ass talking point of this breakdown is the next scene, and it appears to be Superboy fighting Deathstroke, or someone in Deathstroke's armor. Now, I do want to mention in that previous breakdown video, going over what the showrunner, the cast said about the plot teasers, the character teasers, that Greg Walker mentioned we would love to see some characters come back, and there are a few from the past who emerged this season from the catacombs of Titans history who show back up. From the catacombs, you say, Greg. So could Slade still be alive? I do remember there being a rumor that there was a cutscene showing S.I. Morales' Deathstroke waking up in hospital after he was stabbed. So it could be the case that actually this is Deathstroke, even though we can't be sure that this is the Deathstroke who was literally stabbed in that alleyway. But let's assume it was for a second. I can actually imagine that Lex Luthor could have hired him along with those ninjas in that Nightwing versus Ninja scene to kind of slow the Titans down. But then again, Deathstroke does have a lot of his own reasons for getting his own revenge on the Titans. Bottom line, Deathstroke is actually, even though I think a lot of people forget this, he is a Titans villain. He recurs a lot in the comic books, so this would be fitting if he kind of pops back up. We do see Gar fighting him as well, and I don't think this is one of those dreamscapey situations where it's not based in reality, because it just doesn't really seem anything like that when, for example, Superboy is fighting him here. Later on in the trailer as well, we see Deathstroke firing at people, and Connor is protecting them by turning his back to Deathstroke. In this shot here, we see Superboy with Dick Grayson lighting up his heat vision on something. I have no idea what. There's some scenes like this where you can't really break too many things down. We then have a shot of Corey using her new Starfire powers, and I believe this could be her testing them out in Star Labs, and that's because we know that Star Labs is a bit of a pit stop for the Titans this season, and where Tim gets something out of it. He gets his bow staff. Likely Beast Boy's gonna get his Beast Boy suit from there. So it makes sense that with Corey having new powers, that she runs a few tests, or they do, to kind of see what she's capable of and learn a little bit more about where these came from, because we can't forget that her sister Blackfire took her powers away from her because they were technically rightfully hers, but there was still something deep down with Corey that was always there. So kind of makes sense to me. Then another big part of the breakdown, or should I just say something that is awesome to see, we get a teaser of Ryan Potter's Beast Boy storyline this season, of which we're finally getting a bit more focus on this year. And we hear him say that ever since we got to Metropolis, strange things have been happening to me. They're trying to tell me something. So this shot that you're seeing on screen now, I believe could be Gar at Star Labs undergoing some testing as well, similar to what I just said about Corey, except it could have resulted in a bit of a mess here, going under the list of strange things that have been happening to him ever since going to Metropolis. Now, among that line of Gar saying about these strange things that are happening to him, we also see Rachel with white hair. Now, you may remember on this channel we have broken this down when they were actually filming these scenes. We got some press shots of them in the streets, and Raven had her white hair just like she does here, and also a chakra gem was missing. Now, we're unsure if this is the Church of Blood's doing or if Jinx was somehow involved. We do know that in the comics, for example, Brother Blood actually takes the chakra gem and actually swallows it. So in this adaptation, it could be something along those lines, or at least where the Church of Blood are trying to get a one-up on the Titans by taking Raven's power potentially. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I mean, obviously she's going to get her hair back, her look back, but going back and honing into Gar's storyline this season, we see him waking up in a very strange, very red looking place in his new suit, and this could be Gar connecting a bit more to where his powers are coming from, or more specifically, what he's linked to that gives him these powers. Now, fans of the comics should know, just like Swamp Thing, who's connected to the elemental force of the green, which governs all plant life, those who have powers like Beast Boy are connected to the red, which is being connected to the more animal life side of things in the universe. So Gar is likely tapping into the red here, and on this tree it could be the totems of the red, or the Titans adaptation of the Parliament of Limbs, which is at the heart of the red. He says that they're trying to tell me something, so honestly I can't wait for this season to potentially go down this route with Beast Boy. It would explain kind of the strange things that are happening to him, and explain how he gets further down into his powers, and that would entail going into the red, learning a little bit more about what he's connected to, where these powers are drawn from. And with that, of course, will indeed come more animal transformations, of which Ryan Potter did confirm. Up next, we see Superboy in Lex Luthor's office, and he's getting swarmed by a SWAT team here, and Connor says, "I can hear everything that these people here say about me. They will never let me forget what I am," which honestly makes me feel really bad for him. And he's also saying this to Corey in this scene, and it looks as though he's at some kind of detention facility. You can see a guard in the background there. Perhaps they have a wing, which would make sense in the DC universe for superpowered people like Connor. Now, I don't know if Lex intentionally does this to him so he can control him, and that was the whole point of this meetup, even though this does appear to be at a different time of day as it's in daytime, or if Connor does something that warrants the SWAT team to show up. And then right after this, we get a shot of Superboy launching or getting ready to use his heat vision, and he gets blasted from behind. And we see that Sebastian is actually in the background here watching this happen, but who is the blast from? What was Superboy about to do with his heat vision? Could Jinx have done this fairness to him, this could be reminiscent of her powers, even though in the concept art it seems to kind of show a yellowy version of her powers. Does he recover from this? And this is potentially what leads to that arrest moment with the SWAT coming, and he obviously yields to them because Connor could easily take them on, but he's not exactly going to, because he's learned that, hey, I can't just flick puny humans if I want to be a good person. Then we get a tease at all of that Titans family fun that we are going to see this season, even beyond this bowling scene that we get here. And we see that Dick and Corey are looking like proud parents, and Starfire is kind of cozying up to Dick here, and we know we're getting dickery. They have feelings for each other, and that will be confessed towards the end of this season. Dick says to Connor, you're a part of our family, and if you leave, it's gonna hurt us. And this obviously goes along that Superboy route, in where he's on a journey of a bit of self-discovery, really trying to figure things out, and honestly is one of my most hyped story aspects of this season. Up next, going back to Jinx, we get a shot of her in a place of which has very high fences and barbed wire, so I'm wondering if she gets taken to a detention facility. You can see she's in chains, and when she goes to take her shoes off, she engulfs herself in this power, likely maybe teleporting away just as Dick Grayson and Corey are trying to get to her. So maybe this is how they initially find her to consult her about the supernatural side of things, and then they catch back up with her in that scene earlier on. Then we see Tim and Bernard running away from this giant snake in the background. Now this is obviously in Star Labs, and it makes me wonder if that's the same snake we saw earlier, or if this is actually Gar connecting it to that scene earlier of where Beast Boy is like coming to, and it's just like there's a bunch of destruction in the background where things may have got out of control. So one of those strange things may have happened to him where he kind of busts up the place. It could also be connected to the trauma that he's dealing with this season. Either way though, it looks like Bernard might trip, and Tim and Bernard have to hide here, and TV Line has a couple of things to say about Bernard with a couple of exclusive images as well, so let's read those out. So they say, there you'll spot Tim Drake, J. Lycurgo, looking very cozy with a certain someone. That would be Bernard, who TV Insider can officially announce will be played by James Scully. He is described by the show as the director of special projects at Star Labs. Working as a high-level scientist, he has to deal with big personalities, yet his passion and uncanny book smarts always gain the admiration from others. Greg Walker tells TV Insider, Bernard will work side by side with the Titans as they battle the dark forces of Metropolis, eventually growing closer to Tim and putting himself in danger along the way. Now, Tim and Bernard are romantic in the comics, but at the same time, I don't know if they're going to lean into that this season, because Tim Drake is pretty young and James Scully is quite a lot older, so I really don't know what they're doing there. Are they going to kind of retcon and age Tim up a little bit? Or is James Scully's Bernard going to be aged down to a bit of a progeny and a young scientist? It's kind of confusing as to what Tim Drake's and Bernard's relationship will be like in this iteration. Then we get some more Mother Mayhem versus Titans action whilst we see Corey using her powers in a diner. And it could be that Raven is using her powers there as well, because we do see similar locations with Mother Mayhem. And here we see a crowd of people, possibly the same crowd that Gar and Superboy were kind of being swarmed with in that scene from earlier, but that one woman is holding up an axe, and then another bunch of fast clips cut back to that young girl screaming as one of the Church of Blood masked figures come at her, and of course the trailer ends off with that really cool Titans lineup shot right as the logo closes the trailer. So, after a long blabber and in-depth ramble breakdown of the Titans Season 4 official trailer, that is everything I've got to say, but what's left is for me to leave the floor to you. What do you think about this trailer? Just let me know your reactions, your favorite parts, what you're most looking forward to out of what was teased in this trailer, but then also definitely let me know what you thought of my theories, if you can expand upon them, if you have a whole different idea. I'll be reading every single comment down in that comment section. We might be getting another trailer. Sometimes there is like an official trailer too, so of course subscribe to the channel if you're brand new here to make sure you do not miss out on that, because you know me, I'll be doing another in-depth trailer breakdown. All that's left to say is if you want to support the channel the extra mile, just leave a like. Something so simple to do but helps out a lot. A bunch of you also aren't subscribed, even though I just talked about subscriptions, so if you do want to subscribe, that would mean a lot and really just helps me grow on this platform. As always, links are in the description down below if you want to follow me on Twitter and other places. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you fellow Titans in that next video. Goodbye.